Okay, well, good evening all. Welcome to the Monday, March 1st, 2021 regular meeting of the Town of Easton Planning and Zoning Board. In keeping with the ongoing emergency order from Governor Charlie Baker to limit gatherings and maximize social distancing, and under legislation passed to address remote board meetings during this emergency declaration, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will also be available on ECAT. To use Zoom, you can follow the link on the town's website on the Planning and Zoning Board agenda. While conducting meetings remotely, we will endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to our stated procedures as possible. However, use of this platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While board members and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will join the webinar as attendee, meaning they are muted with no video feed from them. During the public testimony portion of the program, meeting members of the public can be recognized by using the raised hand function or the Q&A function on Zoom. If you are joining only by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. If applicant wishes to display materials, please request ahead of time to the chair of the board or staff. When starting testimony, please state your name and address for the record. Board members will be asked to announce themselves when making a motion and second, so that it'll be clear to the audience and to minute takers who made the motions. All votes will be by roll call. We will start with a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. Strange here.
Here.
Stetson, aye. Or Stetson here.
Balsaric here.
Amos, did you check in?
He's muted.
Good job. I heard breathing, that counts. All right, great. Thank you all. Thanks for joining us. Let's see, first up, in a couple doses of deja vu, we have a request to continue 58 Mill Street, Owl Ridge Estates to March 29th. If someone would care to handle that, I would appreciate it.
Motion to continue 58 Mill Street and 5 Owl Ridge Road.
Second.
All those in favor, Strange eye.
Shane, aye.
Stetson, aye.
Anderson, aye.
Balsaric aye.
That is unanimous. And we need the same, except extending out to the Ides of March, March 15th, Sawmill Village, 560 Foundry Street.
Motion to continue Sawmill Village to March 15th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, Strange eye.
Shane, aye.
Stetson, aye.
Aye.
Balsaric aye.
That's unanimous. Very good. Thank you. So first up, that's not continued, we have an A&R plan, 5 Sonia Marie Way, J.K. Holmgren Engineering. Stephanie, I'll let you take that.
Scott Rogers, are you here for that on behalf of Scott Faria? If you could raise your hand. Well, I'm going to make him a panelist anyway. Okay. So this is an A&R plan to carve off a portion of lot 25G and combine it with lot 25H. And let's see. I don't know why. Let's see. I meant to. I'm sorry, Kim Pincus, I'm going to put you on hold unless you are here for this. someone seemed to have come in just as I was trying to make Scott Rogers a panelist. We'll try that again. Okay. In reviewing it, one, the A&R plan did not show the wetlands, and that's particularly important with these two lots because Morse Pond exists on the back portions of each of the lots, and lot 25G does not have sufficient contiguous uplands even before carving off the piece that that is intended to be conveyed to lot 25H. But on further reviewing the project, I realized that the application was not submitted by the owners of 25G. In fact, it was submitted by the individuals to whom the owners of 25H, who are the recipients of the conveyance. And I don't see how the board could endorse a plan where the applicant is not the property owner for which the land is being divided. So Scott, I don't know if you, Scott?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so Scott Ferry and I talked about it briefly today. He said that we were going to continue it anyways, based on all the things that you just mentioned. So we have a little bit of work to do to clean things up a little bit.
Okay. Greg, you're on mute.
Do we need to make a motion or do we just continue?
Yeah, you should make a motion to continue.
Well. what
Make a
member-
motion to continue 5 Sonia Maria Way.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, and I'll just check, make sure. I see none on the audience. All those in favor of continuing? Strange eye.
DeShane, aye.
Stetson, I.
Aye.
Balsaric, aye.
And that is unanimous. Thank you. Where'd my agenda go? There it is. Okay. Bear with me here. I have to zoom back in. All right. Oh, House of Possibilities, site plan review, 350 Washington Street. Is there anyone presenting for that, Stephanie? I'm assuming.
That would be Scott. So Scott, if you could unmute yourself.
I'm here.
And do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share mine?
I can share mine, I think.
So just to make sure we're on the right page, this is our first take a look at this. And Stephanie, if I'm not mistaken, you told me this was the one where we still have nothing back from Woodward and Curran.
Right, we just
But
met
the-
with Woodard and Curran on Friday. I've done a cursory review, but I haven't done a detailed review and produced a staff report myself either.
And the applicant still wish to at least give a brief presentation to the board just to introduce us to it, I guess. So,
Yes.
all right, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening. For the record, my name is Scott Rogers, JK Holmgren Engineering. With me tonight, I believe, is Kate Torino, who's from the House of Possibilities. She's the executive director. Also with us tonight is Jim Pyatt, our architect, and Dale Dennis, who's the landscape architect on the project. So we're excited about this project. I believe I'm sharing my site plan package with you. So this expansion will provide a great service to the community. The House of Possibilities is a facility for children and adults with disabilities and also for their caregivers. So if I flip to the existing additions plan, obviously the existing building is shown on the north side, kind of angled, if you will, from the street. And there's a parking area that's south of that. This property sits on about an acre of land or so, and is surrounded by land owned by Stonehill College, and also on the south side of the site, Moreau Hall is abutting us. So we are proposing a new addition to the existing building, which is on the north side. You can see that in the kind of a darker hatch there. That'll connect to the existing building in the rear of that. And there'll be a nice courtyard that sits between the existing building and the new addition. And Jim, the architect, will get into that a little bit later in a little more detail. So we're also expanding the existing parking lot on the western side of the site, closer to Washington Street. Currently, I believe there's a total of 28 parking spaces. We are expanding the parking lot to a total of 46 total. And there's, the bylaw is pretty silent on this type of a use. So we basically went by an employee count, and the ultimate employee count with the addition will be 25 spaces. So, because basically the students that attend this, and I'm going to call it a school every once in a while, which is, I'll put in air quotes, I guess. Basically the students don't drive. Everyone that comes to this facility will either be dropped off or picked up in vans. And there are shuttle vans that the House of Possibilities does have. We're also providing some pedestrian circulation around the parking lot, which will help us to connect both the existing building and the new building to the parking area with crosswalks, as you can see in those thick dash lines, if you will. And then we're showing on the site plan, the layout materials plan, we're showing snow storage areas. And there is an existing wetland, which is actually off-site behind Moreau Hall. And you can kind of see it on the top right-hand corner of our plan set. And we are planning on staying outside of the 100-foot buffer zone for that. We've had conversations with Andrea a little bit, so she has a couple questions for us, but we're working through that. Also, you can see on the eastern side of the site, we're providing a open air pavilion, which will be used for some outdoor activities, and Jim can get into that in a little bit more detail as well. So in regards to grading and drainage for the facility, on the north side of the site, we are providing a swale. The existing grade kind of slopes up towards the rear of the property. So we're providing a swale, which will get the runoff towards Washington Street. There's also some small depressions, like a foot deep, with some yard drains. And that's going to also help accommodate the roof drainage from the building. That's going to flow around towards Washington Street to a bioretention area, a small bioretention area, which is located just on the side of the entrance, and that'll overflow into the existing drainage system. As far as the pavilion itself, it's an open air pavilion. Jim can get into detail on that, but it is basically a canopy with some screen walls, I'll call them. So it's not really a totally enclosed structure, but that will have a small infiltration facility for the roof runoff for that. And then as far as the existing parking lot and the expansion, we are providing towards the Washington Street side, a swale, which will discharge into a catch basin, if you will, and a manhole that'll also discharge to the existing drainage system. The existing drainage system that was built for the original facility is basically 18-inch pipes, perforated pipes surrounded by stone. It's a rather large system. You can kind of see it located with the dash lines here. When we designed that back, I believe, Stephanie, it was 2007 or 2008 maybe, but that was over-designed. That was basically designed with the intention that this property would be expanded on at some point. So we looked through the drainage design and we modeled that system, if you will, and there was plenty of capacity in there to handle the new expansion area. There is the existing storm scepter for that, which provides the stormwater quality for the parking lot. And then we are planning on upgrading some of our utilities. Unfortunately for us right now, a lot of the utilities come through the proposed addition. So we'll have to relocate the gas service. We're going to have to relocate the water service to the building. And we're also upgrading to a fire service because the building will be sprinkled. And then we'll be upgrading and relocating telephone, electric, and data as well. You can see there's an existing septic system on the property, which will need to be expanded for the new use. And we are working with the Board of Health on that expansion. That'll come a little bit later in our permitting process. And then we did provide the board a erosion control plan, which will basically, show areas for stockpiles, areas where we'll have construction trailer with sanitary facilities. Also silt socks areas around the limit of work, which will help prevent, sediment and siltation from getting into the buffer zones for that wetland in the back there. So we are providing that erosion control. And then just to kind of update you on where we are with our process here, we have a meeting hopefully this week with the fire department to discuss the site as well as things like the fire service, the sprinkler system in general, as far as where we are right now with permitting. And the DPW and the police have approved the site, and affordable housing and historic would be considered not applicable for this particular property. I believe Stephanie might have mentioned this. We did have a pre-meeting with Woodward and Current that happened on Friday, and there are some, supplemental information that I need to provide to them probably this week. But I believe that they'll be sending a quote out to Stephanie and we'll pay that review fee. So I guess the next thing I'd like to do is to introduce Jim Pyatt from Pyatt Associates, who will talk about the architecture of the building.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and do people want,
Greg?
Yes, I can hear.
do I start the video or do you just want to hear the voice?
It depends.
choice.
How are you dressed?
Let me see if I can. I don't know if I'm showing up for all of you. On my screen, I can't tell.
I can see you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Screen-worthy.
Oh, all right, thank you. I just had my first vaccination today, so I normally would have worn a collared shirt for an event like this, but anyway. Well, so thank you, everybody, and I appreciate the start explaining the project that Scott did, and I think he covered a lot of things that I thought maybe I would have to have, so I can hopefully keep this fairly short. Scott, could you give me the aerial view? There we go. All right, so the reasons for the project initially was to create a new addition because the initial program has changed a little bit. It originally was just supposed to be providing respite care for weekend and evening relief for caregivers. And it was a fun time for overnights for the members. And then COVID struck last year. And so Katie, the director, had the idea of creating an open air pavilion so there could be an outdoor space for socially distanced activities and to just basically keep things functioning when in a situation where it was really, the situation was strained, to put it mildly. So we started with the pavilion, which is in the upper right of this picture with the sloping kind of roof and the little wood side. And then, but we then got into the addition and thought, well, we need to talk about all of these things because eventually we need to come in front of this board and we should just talk about everything all at once. So we have the pavilion, then we have the addition, which is everything you see to the left of the existing building, which is the sort of traditional looking building right in the middle of this picture. So we started working with that. And in addition to a sort of equaling the program that exists in the existing building and expanding it, right now they have approximately 47 members, or approximately exactly 47 members. And they wanted to increase it because of the demand and the service that could be provided to many more families to about 150 members. So, so we created a program around that, and most of that program will be provided in all the new structures off to the left of the traditional building. The original building would now revert more to its original use, which is for the overnight stays, respite stays, the weekend stays for the members. So there are two different sort of groups of users, the people who are here on weekdays doing day hab activities, job training for certain kinds of things that people can do, And then this sort of overnight function for people who are actually staying and giving, as I said, the caregivers a little time off. So what we wanted to do with the buildings, the site plan sort of described where they were, obviously, was create a sense of a little bit of a village. Right now, my feeling is, and our team's feeling is that the existing building is a little bit aloof. The first time most people drive by it, they don't even notice it's there. And we really wanted to have a little bit more profile. And with the program we were adding, it had to go somewhere. And getting out closer to the street, we thought was important. So now with this new design, when you drive in off the street, you're sort of in the middle of a collection of little buildings, a little village center of a sort. So you're almost in an interior space compared to the way it is now, as soon as you arrive off the street. So a small a collection of buildings. All buildings, one of the reasons it spreads out so much, the new building is about 14,000 square feet. The existing building is about 11,000, a little over, on 3 floors, one of which is buried into a sort of an odd kind of a depression out the back of the building. And the reason we did that is we felt, given the nature of the membership, the clients, basically, we wanted a totally 100% accessible building. So all new functions are on one level, including administrative. So on that one level, just a very brief thing, looking at this rendering, the aerial. On the left-hand side, the sort of barn-like building is a community room that can be subdivided. Just to the right of that, the little flat-roofed area behind the colonnade is a lobby area, toilets, a music room. And then to the right of that, right behind the colonnade with a roof monitor, is a cafe that's just a little bit bigger than the one that exists currently in the existing building, that services basically the members and staff if they choose to eat in there. There are other options for staff as well. And then behind that, the sort of repeated space is the training kitchen. So rather than just give people spaces that we thought right now are down in the basement, a little flat roof, not many windows and things like that in that existing building, we wanted to give people a space that would actually be pleasant to come to, with daylighting, a little shape to the space, a little drama, and create a quality architectural space. Then along the bar of the building at the back is an art room, which has another sloping ceiling. And there's a bump sort of sticking up just to the left of the existing building. We will enclose all rooftop mechanical with various sculptural forms in natural wood. We haven't gotten to the point of designing all the mechanical systems yet, but I'm sort of making an assumption based on experience about what we might need, but that may modify a little bit as we go along. But our intent is to hide things. And then off to the far right is the pavilion and its outdoor spaces. I think I mentioned if we could go to the entry view, Scott, the ground floor that shows the colonnade. No, there we go. So just giving a little bit ideas behind the architecture. When I think of the House of Possibilities, I think of the sort of cliched t-shirt, expect the unexpected. We want people to feel like this is a place that things could happen that are maybe beyond what the families and the members think was possible in their lives. And to that extent, I wanted the architecture to give some, in addition to being a warm welcome, daylighting and sunlight and all that, to give a little bit of that expression. So the form on the far left, the sort of white barn form, which is clad in sort of robust board and batten, has windows in odd locations. The idea being that the windows are never what you expect them are going to be. Some of them, if you were inside, it'd be like in a strange art gallery where sometimes you have a little window and you see just pictures of clouds, and then little ones near the ground, you're going to be looking out at a little wildflower garden that's in the retention area off to the left of that building and behind the stone walls that exist. Then there'll be large windows, 1 or 2 in each of the spaces. This building can be divided into 3 with curtaining so that we can have smaller groups. Once that's pulled away, you could have the whole facility gather almost at once. It would be suitable for possibly renting out for community events. It will also be available for their spring gala, for fundraising events, and any other uses they can think of for it. Let me see here. We wanted that building because it's sort of the most important. When I first started talking to Katie about this a little over a year ago, the idea was to create a sense that, again, the building, the whole project is not so interior, so introverted. I wanted a space that would say things could happen here. And I guess the inspiration came years ago, about 25 years ago. I had organized a fundraiser out at Codman Farms in Lincoln, and it's a big white barn, and I organized a big square dance with a barbecue, and so I wanted to create a space that could be that kind of sort of simple, generic kind of space that almost anything could happen in, from a big space, from a big event to little activities. Finally, I think I mentioned the wooden, the arcade, the columned arcade across the front. The lobby entrance is to the left. Immediately when you go through the doors, there's sort of a living room-like space, similar to what they have now in the existing building. And off to the right is this cafe or lunchroom. And then that colonnade gives a fairly sheltered linkage over to the existing building. There will be some small interaction from members going from one to the other for some of the job training in the hospitality aspect of what they're doing. Could we see just the northwest view, Scott? Okay, this view I just wanted everybody to be able to see as you approach from, if you're heading south on 138, this would be what you would see out to the front. Dennis Dale will describe the planting if everybody has time or patience for that. But the long facade that faces the forest on the left-hand side, again, I started off with sort of a one-story bar of a building, and then enlivened that with various shapes, either that sloping shape just beyond the white barn, which is the ceiling of the art room. There are some bay windows sticking out that give little alcoves that members can sort of get off away from the rest of the group, and also get different views up and down the landscape out toward the street, toward the rear of the lot. And then you can see beyond that shape with its skylights, what I was talking about for a mechanical screen that would come up and create another sense of pieces of building as you go along, sort of like little jewels along a string. The last thing to look at is the pavilion picture, Scott. Okay, this is the thing that we actually want to build first. It has almost no requirements. It doesn't affect the septic system because this is being built for the existing membership. There's some electrical in it. There will be some plumbing, basically just for a hose or a faucet, so that people can do outdoor gardening in little raised beds. There can be picnic tables underneath. Again, remember, this was designed to give sort of expansion, outdoor space, sort of three-season space in a time of COVID. But I think it's come to be thought of as sort of an exciting opportunity for outdoor experience, even well beyond COVID. The collection of different shaped openings and windows that you saw in the barn form is sort of carried over here in an open work wood screen on the ends. It'll be a post and beam construction, approximately 30 feet wide by 60 feet deep. The roof shape has been designed. If they can achieve funding for it at some point in the future, that the majority of the roof has a perfect south orientation for solar panels. So that's the reason for the pitch and the emphasis on the southern direction. This whole area gets screened in by a fence, which we will be thinking about being as transparent as possible. There may be some wood bits of it at the gates and things like that, so it has a certain solidity. And then I didn't illustrate it in this picture, but the idea would be to grow vines as much as possible on it, so it's sort of a green fence. And then you'll see in Dennis's plan, there is some low non-mowing ground cover of some sort out in front, perhaps liriope. Dennis may have more to say about that. And then the tree planting. We're looking right now, we believe at some point somebody will ask, Scott has suggested, do we have a photometric plan for the site lighting? We do not have one yet. What's illustrated in this picture is the existing acorn-like fixtures. I'm not sure if they qualify for sort of night sky mitigation issues, or even if they throw enough light on the ground for the way we'd like to do it right now. So that aspect of the design is in development. And I think with that, I could turn it back to either to Scott, or we could move on to the landscape plan with Dennis Dale. Unless anybody has questions right now, I can clarify things quickly if you'd like.
No, I think you can keep going, and we'll hold any questions at the end of your presentation of your
All
team.
right. So is Dennis?
Yes, he has been made a panelist. But he may be muted.
Okay. Do I turn on the video here? Or do you do
No,
that?
yeah, turn it, they can see your face.
They see my name, but
No, but have them see your face.
how do I see that?
In the bottom left corner of your screen, it says video, start video. Other left, there, start video.
Sorry for the delay. My name's Dennis Dale. Jim has produced a wonderful plan here, and working closely with Scott Rogers on this, one of the things that we felt was compelling about the site is that it is in this very natural wooded area around the outside. And having walked the nature trail through there, there's a wonderful sets of ground covers. There's some very unique trees. There's a chestnut, American chestnut, that is just off the edge of the property. So as we've been working on this and working with Scott, the idea of the north edge where the art rooms look out into the north, there is actually presently there is a deer fence along there because the present site actually has had some wonderful perennial gardens that I think at this point might be just a little bit too big for them to take care of. So our intent is to kind of bring back a more natural focused landscape. We have a preliminary plant list, which we're working with. It's kind of getting the clay on the table in terms of the direction we want to go. But working in harmony with what Scott was talking about in terms of the drainage down by Washington Street and the entrance down there, that is our rain garden space. And Jim had mentioned the view out to that space where we would have Joe Pye weed, asters, different wetland plants that really would kind of tie the natural north edge into that end of that larger structure, the barn-like structure. Coming into the parking lot, one of the things that we worked on that Scott and Jim and I worked on was making sure that this parking lot circulation was such that it flows. There's just a natural flow as you drive in, and utilizing that area that that Scott had mentioned, where we have our water retention area, that allowed us to allow the drop off to kind of swing in front of the existing building and swing right to the front of the new wing. And in the process of doing that, we removed some asphalt that was essentially just part of the turnaround in the front of the building, and utilized that parking lot as that circulation. So we're essentially removing a certain amount of impervious surface. But in the process of doing that, we were able to make a kind of a courtyard space out, kind of a forecourt into the other buildings by making a little seating area. And we're using red maples around that area, multi-stem red maples in that front area. That also provides us with our 20 square feet of green open space per parking, per each parking space. So we now have probably 1,800 square feet of green space that's associated with the parking lot. Our focus as you head up towards the pavilion, the programming is something that we're really psyched about. We have the outdoor, these little squares represent these little community garden spaces where we can grow culinary herbs, and do a little bit of training and have some fun with that on the south side. Now on the north side, we have a outdoor dining space. Those three trees right now are sycamores, limbed up real high to have kind of a nice outdoor park-like space. And it's also a place for different types of games and events. It's kind of a flexible space. The other important area that we have is this adjacent to the existing building. There you'll see three awnings in there, and that's where we're looking at like a little interior entry courtyard garden. It will do double duty. It has to kind of screen some of our utilities that are in there, air conditioning units and things. And that would be a shade garden because it's on the north side of that building, but it would be all essentially native plant materials, a native shade garden. So the other thing we're very happy to be able to do is to save the linden trees along the edge of Washington Street, and with some judicious grading and drainage. So and those trees were planted back in 2008, and you can see how much they've grown in the past 11 years, or 9 years actually. It's only 9 years. That essentially provides our screening that we would need from the street. And yeah, we are looking at the lighting and seeing if we can either add more efficiency to the fixtures themselves, but make sure that it is a dark sky focused lighting system. And we keep all our light within our parking spaces. So we are looking at salvaging some of the paving that's on site, and as well as some of the existing perennials, and bringing them down into a smaller gardens that are a little bit more contained. The other element is up by the wetland corner up there, where we are creating a little bit more level area. That whole edge would be planted with native ground covers, such as sweet fern and low bush blueberry, and probably some of the low grow sumac in those locations. That's pretty much where we are presently with the landscape project. So I'll hand it back either to Scott or Jim, or open it up to questions.
Thank you. Scott or Jim, do you guys have more to present, or do you want me to open it up to the board?
No, I think we're ready to hear any comments or questions you may have from the board's point of view.
Okay.
Yeah,
Stephanie, you want to start us off? Do you have any?
Oh, did you ask me that?
I did, look at that.
I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Photometric plan was one of the things that I mentioned when we met on Friday. I heard native material used a lot, referring to the plant material. Yet there are, I think it's virtually all cultivars that are listed on the planting plan. The preference is that true natives be used. And
But I love sycamore trees.
did you say, but you love sycamore trees?
I love sycamore trees. London plane, you know, anything I can get.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think that's all for now. The stormwater was discussed. We talked a lot about whether this was, it is definitely a mix of redevelopment and new development. There is a lot of new impervious surface or disturbed area. So, you know, that will be looked at in Woodard and Curran's review. And the mention about the acorn lights possibly not being dark sky friendly. I also understand they're lower than some of your typical the word that comes to mind is industrial lighting. So it sounds like you may be considering changing those out, or I don't know if you're planning on keeping some of them. But those
Given the
are,
level of detail that has been put into these plans already, I'd be fine with just waiving the photometric plan altogether, so long as it's dark sky compliant.
Stephanie, can you hear me?
Yeah, go
I-
right ahead.
Yeah,
Thank
what I was going to say about the lights, we're looking at a couple of different things. I think you're saying you don't want to see some very tall, like car dealership kind of lighting happen on the site.
well, I think the lower lighting and the acorn lighting may be, even though it might not be top shaded, it may be less dark sky unfriendly than other types of bright. I think car dealership light is a good analogy.
So are you saying, well, on the one, we were basically going to be looking at them, not critically in the sense of we're negative about the acorn light, more like, is there a better solution that accomplishes, I think, a lot of things? If there is something stylistic about them that is important to you, I guess I should know about that.
That I was not commenting on this style.
Okay, yep,
So,
then I take all the other comments and we're going to be working on that.
So that's all I have, Greg.
Okay. Any board members have questions or comments?
Yeah. So is there no additional, like, say, most of the stormwater is being handled on site? It's not running off to the street? I know there's one drain at Washington Street.
Yeah, that's correct. There'll be no runoff going into Washington Street. Mass
Okay, there are no
DOT
hookups
tends
to
to-
the Washington Street drainage?
I'm sorry?
Oh, there are no hookups to the Washington Street drainage, right? To the-
No,
to the
and
project.
Mass DOT would never allow us to do that,
Alright,
unfortunately.
so-
Yep.
And just kind of a side note on that, the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook and the regulations that came back in, I think it was 2008, required that you retain as much as you can of your stormwater on site and infiltrate it
Yeah,
back.
just because, you know, sometimes that entrance to sheep pasture on the other side gets a little wet during the wet season. So I wasn't sure, maybe there are already some street drains going in that direction.
So I have a question. Kevin asking, so where is the drainage go now on this property, and where is going to go after the project gets done? It wasn't clear.
So I can answer that. Scott Rogers again. So I'm gonna go back to my plan for a second. So in the bottom right-hand corner of our lot, there's a large underground infiltration system, which is 18-inch pipes with a massive amount of stone, and it's a good size, it's a pretty good size system. It's probably, I don't know, 15% of the entire site, basically. So we'll be tying into that, but there'll also be stormwater runoff facilities on the north side in the form of a swale and a bioretention area. That'll also overflow into that system. And then I mentioned before, the open air pavilion will have a small infiltration system for itself, which is pretty tiny in comparison to everything else. So everything will be contained on site. That's our intention.
So just to be clear, the water coming from the building to the front of that barn, if you will, is connected under the entrance way to the infiltration system?
So the roof runoff for the addition will have a roof leaders, if you will, on the northern side, and that'll discharge into a couple of yard drains, and then that will connect into the bioretention area, which will eventually connect to the existing drain system. So it's kind of a series of different connection points, if you will.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Hi, I just wanted to say that I thought that you did, it's a very nice presentation, but that also you did a really nice job of breaking up and varying the mass of the proposed structure. So it does have a feeling of, being a number of smaller buildings, which you mentioned, and I think seems to be working effectively. Some of this information might be on the plan, and I might not have zoomed in, or I might be missing it. So excuse me for asking. But so the lot coverage of the proposed structures is, I'm assuming you're well below the requirements, or what is the proposed lot coverage?
So you bring up an interesting point, Scott Rogers again. So in this particular zone, all of the requirements for lot coverage, setbacks, pretty much everything is to be determined by the Planning and Zoning Board. So on my zoning table on sheet C3, pretty much everything that says required just kind of says NA. And I probably should have put a little footnote and said, to be determined by the Planning and Zoning Board. We did have conversations with Stephanie early on in the process where we showed her the addition and the setbacks. So we had some direction going forward, but there are no specific requirements for zoning, which is interesting.
Beauty of the eleemosynary zone.
How about, obviously the existing structure is, not that large. I guess that's relative, but it's relatively small compared to the lot size. So what was the lot coverage as it exists, and what is the proposed lot coverage?
So the existing lot coverage is about 27%.
Okay. What's the proposed?
That doesn't make sense. No, that's less than
It
that.
can't be that much.
No, it's not. Sorry. The proposed is 19. So the existing is probably 10, let's say.
Okay. And what is the required parking, and what are you proposing?
So again, unfortunately, the zoning bylaw is kind of silent on this type of a use. So we tried to fit something into the zoning bylaw. There really wasn't anything that was even close. So what we've determined to do was to have enough parking spaces for employees and enough for visitors. So as I had mentioned before, I think the total employee count would be 25 when all is said and done. And right now we have 46 parking spaces. So we feel we've got enough for visitors and for employees. As I mentioned, and I'm going to call them students. Jim will probably call them something different, but
Members
members. Yeah, they don't drive to the facility. So
What is the building code proposed use? Is it a I use or an R use?
It's a combination of assembly and education. I don't have the detail in front of me right now, but And that's, I guess, what it would continue according to my code reviewer.
Okay. And then I was just curious, again, I think your renderings were very nice and the
Thank
way
you.
things look like they came together. Do you have an idea of what the proposed material is, particularly on that front building?
Well, what I'm thinking, let's start with the front building. First of all the materials, I guess I would say, are traditional materials. They're based on something that looks like wood or looks like metal or something like that. It's not going to be a concrete building. There will probably be no brick on it. But the front building is supposed to be what I described as a robust board and batten. So I'm talking about a 2x2, which is actually a 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch batten. Most battens that you see around are 3/4 by 1.5 inches. I'd like these to be a little bit deeper than that. And I would ideally like to match that with a metal roof where you would have a clip batten, which has the same dimension, 1.5 inches wide by 1.5 inches deep. And so if I can perfect this in the drawings, those two things would sort of line up if you looked at the building straight on. So it would look like a similar material coming down over the sides. On the other sides of the building, there would be a combination of clapboard with battens on that north side, as I talked about. There would be a few areas in the building that I would either use a cedar board that would come down over the side, so you would look like a natural cedar tongue and groove 1x6s, and those would continue up and create sort of this open work fence-like structure around the mechanical. It wouldn't be that open. The whole idea is to conceal it. So wherever in this particular picture that you see sort of that pinkish, tannish color, that would be a natural cedar. The roof would be metal. I'm going between, on the barn, making it exactly the same color, a white, with sort of colored, having the windows deeply inset, about 8 inches. And then painting the inside of that recess a color. Here I've sort of suggested a sort of a slightly lilac blue, but we may play with that a little bit. And then the other parts of the roof, again, going with the idea that these are supposed to be a collection of buildings, would be a weathered zinc finished aluminum standing seam. So board and batten, clapboard, and cedar tongue and groove would be the primary materials.
Okay. And I'm just having trouble recollecting now. Are those stone walls in place there? I know the
Yes.
sidewalk. Okay. All right. And that front building then is set back from, I don't know, the sidewalk or the stone wall by approximately what's the?
I think we're about, I don't have that plan in front of me. I think we're about 24 feet behind the stone wall.
All right. Well, that's all I have. And thank you.
Great, thanks, Deb. Any other questions from the board? No, all right. Any from the audience? I don't see any raised hands. I want to thank the team for their presentation. Obviously, we're going to have to continue as we still wait for the peer review comments. And it's a nice looking project, doing a good job, great job, and certainly serving a function, a community that is often overlooked and underserved. So we thank you all for that.
May I ask a question, Greg?
Sure.
Just I know that on the civil side for sure, and on the lighting and the photometrics, we've got some work that's going to be continuing. On the architectural side, are there things that we need to be developing, explaining, preparing? I don't want to get to the next meeting and find out, well, I should have been doing this for the last month or so.
No, I mean, on this project, we're the planning board, planning and zoning. So architecture, although sometimes is in our purview under special permits, it really isn't here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other than, right, we have to, we have sort of a wild card. We can set what we want with front and side setbacks. And obviously you've gotten this far up the road on previous feedback from the planner. So I don't, I would loathe to turn that back. And, other than, the lighting fixture, right, dark sky compliant, something that we can tie into the final set of plans. No, I think we really just need to see the feedback from Woodward and Curran.
All right.
On drainage or septic, whatever they're reviewing, so that then we can sign off. Unless
right,
I'm
thank you.
missing something that my board and director wants to remind me of, but I certainly, you guys have done a well-rounded job. I don't see much missing here other than what we've already discussed.
Thank you.
I have a question. When you plan the landscaping, you kind of try to like pick like trees that don't grow too tall. Is that the idea? And I've seen it on other projects too. I'm just wondering, like in general, how you decide what types of trees to use sometimes.
Is that could be a function of my rendering. I'll let Dennis answer. I never like to draw them so large.
Or your plant care.
You might say, well, they look a little bit big, or we have to wait 100 years, but I don't want to make them look so scrawny because they will probably grow fairly quickly. But I'd rather have Dennis answer. I tried to make them, in some cases, what I thought was the ultimate size, but I'd rather have Dennis address that.
Yes, it's always a challenge to, on a site plan, to identify what caliper or what size the shade canopy should be, because and you're kind of drawing it like 3 or 4 years down the line. Now, I know that and many zoning requirements require that the trees be like a 3-inch caliper tree when they're planted. So the canopy may be anywhere between 6 and 8 feet or so. So the ones in the middle island are pretty much maybe a couple of years after they've been planted. Those are the red maples. On the corner down by the retention basin there, the rain garden, we're actually considering sassafras, a grove of sassafras trees, which is what Jim had illustrated in his elevations. So thus the bright orange colored leaves, which leads me to a question. With the planting plan or the planting schedule that you see on this plan, it was kind of a placeholder, partly because I mean, a lot of these plants are what we found on site that were available on site, and initial thought was, how much can we save and relocate? But now we're realizing that that's often a lost leader, because it takes so much effort to save and maintain the plant material that by the time you get it replanted, you might as well have bought it new from the nursery. So yeah, it's true that there are a number of cultivars on this list. I mean, some things that would never be planted out at the edges, like we never use the, we have vinca on here. Yeah, we would never use that because that's considered an invasive. So for the next plan, we'll probably refine the planting plan to, especially for the shade garden areas and for the rain garden space, as well as the slope up by the wetland there. And also along the edge, the north edge, that we really wanted to use the native plant material kind of stepping through, because we're going to replace there's a deer fence that is presently on site. And I think they were having troubles with everything that they were planting out there in the perennial garden, becoming salad for the deer. So that'll be replaced. Within that edge, there's a fair amount of young trees, white pine, and that are growing up along that outer edge there. And so what we're looking at is that as you look out from the art rooms, you would see, and that's a bit of a slope there. We want to retain that slope. Probably be low bush blueberry and sweet fern to kind of recolonize that edge. Some different types of low bush dogwoods in there. And I guess that's really my only question is, how refined would you like the planting schedule to be at this point? We're still kind of, as you can tell, working on it. So,
I'll weigh in on that. Again, the rules and regulations call for native material. So I like the idea that you're trying to draw in plant material that mimics what you're finding just off-site. It sounds like there's a lot of non-native material currently on site used in the cultivated landscaping plan. So you mentioned the sweet fern and the low bush blueberries. I don't know, you know, I'm sure there's witch hazel growing out there. I like the idea of the sassafras because it does provide a lot of color. It's a native, and it's something that I think I've seen out there when I ride out behind Stonehill. So
We're on the same path too. So I go down the mountain. I take the mountain bike path though, not the paved one.
yeah.
And you can make a good beverage with the roots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, there are hemlock trees along
Yeah.
top of that, but I'm not going to say put a bunch of hemlock trees in front, because that was what that would be. You know, that might change the scale of your landscape plans.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So,
Hey, no, that's a great answer. Thank you.
Well, you know, we're lucky with the proximity to all the Ames estates around here. You know, there's quite a few. There's several sort of arboretums, and that's why we found. In fact, a couple of years ago, I found the northernmost cork oak ever found in North America over on the Maine estate.
Wow.
So it's
That's exciting.
it's nice to find these little gems kicking around.
yeah, and it was amazing to see that the American chestnut
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right behind, you know, just off the edge of the property there. So,
In fact, if you were to go probably a quarter mile in east of here, probably the largest, most straight black walnut I've ever seen. I mean, it must be 150 feet tall. It's enormous. Out in the middle of nowhere, you know, beautiful tree. But anyways, great. Well, so are we going to continue to the next meeting, or is Woodward and Curran going to need more time? How far?
I think they should be done by the next meeting.
Okay. So team, are you good with what's our next meeting?
It is the
15th.
March 15th, yeah, Ides of March.
To motion to continue, Deshane, motion to continue to March 15th. March 15th.
Stephanie, can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is Scott. So we have to engage Woodward and Curran. They have to write the review, and then I'll have to make a bunch of changes to drainage, theoretically, I suppose. So we can certainly be here for the 15th, and we can continue to talk about the landscape plan and things that we're changing, but I'm not sure if I'll have all my drainage done in 2 weeks. But
Well, I mean, if you'd rather, I don't want to make everybody have to get together. I think the landscaping is a pretty easy.
Right, yeah.
If you want to go out, do you want to do it the 15th and then we can continue if you want to, or we could just go out to the 29th, you know, whatever you guys want.
how about if we do this? How about if we keep us on for the 15th and we'll see how it goes over the next couple of weeks?
Okay. Yeah, and if you need to continue, I honestly, I'd rather do it in one meeting than two. I mean, I think we all would. So I don't see anything, you know, I don't see anything that you know, troublesome here. So
Right, yeah.
lack of great. All right. So Peter, I'm sorry, did you make the motion on the 15th?
Yeah, I'll reiterate my motion to continue to March 15th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, Strange eye.
Shane, aye.
That's an aye.
Anderson, I.
Sarah guy.
And that is unanimous. Great. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much,
Have a
guys.
nice night. All right. Planning board members, let's see, site plan review. Oh, next up, okay, we're now gonna have our zoning discussion. I'm just gonna rearrange a couple windows here.
Scott, if you could stop sharing your screen.
Yep. I'm trying.
Okay. Well, I can just, okay.
I got
We're
you.
good.
All right. So we have, in no specific order, we have several items that we are considering for town meeting in May. And they are, one, we're looking at a couple zoning amendments, one to deal with accessory structures, perhaps limiting the size of those, temporary storage units, used as structures, excuse me. And also on the Quesad Commercial District, we have a couple parcels that inadvertently were deleted from the map at town meeting. We had discovered those prior to, but given the tumultuous night that was with the storms and the small crowd and the COVID, we had decided not to do anything with on the floor. Just deal
Was
with
that Quesad or Furnace Village?
Furnace Village. Oh, did I say Quesad? Forgive
Yes,
me.
yeah.
No, the Furnace Village. So we have a couple things there, and then we also have to discuss the last thing, which was the density and dimensional requirements, which fell victim to a quorum call, and we just have to go through that. And then in the Quesad Commercial District, as we had mentioned at our last meeting, we're going to have a discussion tonight regarding possibly some changes to Sub-District C, kind of resulting from the 661 Washington Street. And so I think that's everything. So you want to knock off the easy stuff first, Stephanie?
Yeah.
Or how do you
So
wanna do it?
I thought this would be a tag team effort.
Yeah.
So everyone, I did send a draft of this to everyone a little later, well, earlier in the evening, after Greg and I had a chance to go through it. I am going to share it. And just so we have it as a reference point. Okay. So as Greg mentioned, the first article is accessory structures. This came up, the zoning enforcement officer recently had a couple of questions posed to him about limitation on size of accessory structures. The zoning is silent on that. It doesn't restrict the size. It does restrict uses. And it doesn't really, there is reference to the type of buildings and not really material, but what would define a storage structure. But it doesn't prevent someone currently from putting, say, a trailer on their property, like a box trailer as a storage unit. So the suggestion is that the board consider limiting the size, and this is just a draft for discussion. What I have written here is, and if I need to zoom in more, I can. And as a suggestion was that except for temporary storage units that may be allowed for up to 3 months, like those personal on, and I always get what the D is, I forget what it's for, but the pods, those personal on-site storage units, that could be allowed for up to, say, 3 months. No storage structure within a residential district would be any type of trailer. And then you can see right below that, the definition of trailer is expanded to include any trailer used to haul materials and goods from one location to another. And then adding section D, except where an accessory structure is located more than, and I'm suggesting maybe 40 feet from any other structure or property line, no accessory structure shall be allowed which total gross floor area is larger than, and again, suggested 30% of the total gross floor area or footprint, which is ever is smaller of the primary structure. And the idea of, Greg and I were talking about this, if someone has a very large parcel and they wanted to put up a structure, maybe they have a hobby, maybe antique cars, they're an antique car collector or something like that, that if they had a large lot, a larger structure might be allowable and not have an impact on the neighborhood. And again, I threw 40 feet out as a suggestion.
So just to summarize and just show, so we're talking two things here, right? One is in discussions with the building commissioner, a resident in town wants to use a storage container, from a ship, the ones that you see, for permanent storage. And the commissioner came back to us and said, he didn't think, he didn't see where that wasn't allowed in the bylaw. So the question is, do we, is that something we need to, do we think we should, do we want to allow that? How do we want to deal with that? That's just a question. So, and again, all this stuff we're doing tonight, we've got a few more meetings to talk about all this. So we're not, we don't have to settle on anything tonight.
Mhm.
If we
Just
settle
for
on
residential only or for every district?
Residential.
residential. And then the second thing that Stephanie was talking about is, it's an interesting question, but it talks about accessory structures, right? Garages, workshops, sheds, etc. And there's been concern from some residents in town because we have nothing now that doesn't allow, but some buildings have been going up that are significantly larger than the homes that they share a lot with, and are, they're not, it's one thing, I guess, if you, if out in the back, if you have a large, if you have a property and you're, I have a barn, but it's out in the back of my yard. But if you start to put it up closer to neighboring properties and, people may start to, we have zoning to try to keep the integrity of a neighborhood. So it's just a question of, is that something we want to get into? And if we do, how do we want to,
Interesting, 'cause in Maine, I was noticing barns that were bigger than the houses, but I guess that's pastoral, whereas we're talking about, are you talking about like construction? Are these construction businesses operating out of a?
No, we're talking about anything. And, I think, I know there was the example I was given, there was some sort of a structure going up that's going to really impose on a neighborhood that has, think of, you have houses that are, and I should say impose on a neighborhood in the opinion of the abutters. And so, we're the planning board. We need to think about planning and things like this, and Easton's rural character and neighborhood character. And we're not trying to keep anybody from having a workshop or whatever the building's for. Just a matter of, do we want, should we address how it's placed, how it's sized? It's a little dicey, but that's some of the things. I know this just came up a week or two ago, and when I get done with a whole bunch of deadlines I'm working on, and I'm going to do a little research. And Stephanie's has a list of some communities that have some wording on this. So
Yeah, it's not unusual for a community to have limits on the size or type of material for an accessory structure. And I think, and again, the impact is different. If you have some of the older lots where they're smaller, it's a little more dense, a larger structure has a larger impact on a neighborhood than some of the larger lots.
Even the larger lots just have larger homes, so they don't have that as much more space in a lot of cases either. Anyway.
It's tricky because there's land rights, right? People have I have at my house, when I bought a house built in 1815, and it had a barn that was built in 1890. Unfortunately, the barn wasn't really cared for, so eventually I took it down. But once you have a barn, you really want to have one. So I built one, but you know, a little bit further back on my property on off to the side. But it, you know, I have to start working some ratios out in my head, and because you know, I get concerned when we start to, when we did the in-law bylaw, it's easy to think, okay, well, what's the size of an in-law, and we put the phrase that it should be accessory to the house, and by that means, you know, the house should be the main structure when it had to do with a in-law. That doesn't, you know, think of it historically, a lot of barns, for example, are significantly larger than homes. You know, the classic, there's many in Easton. Some of them are revered as historical, but you know, the classic the New England big house, back house, outhouse barn, it's called. And it's, you know, you start with a small house and then you had a barn, and then eventually it connected as bathrooms went inside, and you know, kitchens used to be outside and they went inside. And so, you know, we have to be careful, I think, when we, you know, we just have to be careful when we regulate, because people, you know, it can get down to design, that's subjective, obviously. But at the same time, you can understand how someone who has moved into a nice, quiet neighborhood and with all houses and landscaping, and you know, they're nice front yards that they like, and then something not very residential goes up and blocks their view of, you know, so again, the property owner has rights that put that blocking item up, but it's just a matter of do we want to regulate that at all? So, and I don't know the answer to it myself. So that's one homework assignment.
I did a little bit of homework, but I think that was Stephanie, or maybe that was Greg, that said other towns. I don't know if all other towns, but some other towns do have a little more structure around accessory structures and a little more guidance. And I think it's up to us to kind of decide how much we want to kind of guide accessory structures on properties. But as it exists right now, as long as you don't exceed the lot coverage and you maintain the setbacks, you can pretty much make it as big as you want. So that can definitely mean that the accessory structure is far greater than the actual primary structure, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the way you understand it, Greg and Stephanie?
Sure, yeah, that seems to make sense what you said.
So I did look, I did thank you, by the way, Stephanie, for or Greg, whoever, drafting this, because I think at least a conversation that we can begin to have. And I think, Greg, you've said stuff before, well, sometimes we're not aware of where the gaps are in our zoning bylaws until different situations present themselves.
That seems to be the norm, honestly, you think of it, you know.
And I mean, I think at this stage, we pretty much just have a residential district. So, you know, there isn't really any differentiation in most of our residential lots between whether, you know, you happen to have 16 acres or you have, you know, you're in a more planned neighborhood, like some of the ones we've just been approving. And so I think that we do need to have some language there, because there's really nothing stopping anyone from building anything to the max size, which right now also, you know, you can have a detached garage, but you can build it as long as you maintain like I said, the lot coverage and the setbacks and the height restriction. So for instance, if your average house, your average, I don't know, I'm going to say average house is a 24 by 36 house. The footprint of that house is 864 square feet. Well, 30% of 864 square feet is 260 square feet. So if you add 864 to 260, you can build a detached structure that's 1,123 square feet. But right now, you can build something much bigger, and it can be a metal warehouse building that's, let's see, what what's our height restriction here? I think it's 35 feet. Is that right?
Yes.
35 feet. So you could build a, 40 by 50 foot, 30 foot high building, metal building. And there's
Two
really nothing
floors.
we can do about it as long as you meet the setbacks. So I did look and looked at some language in different towns, which I can share a couple of points if it's okay.
Sure.
So one of them, which this would be a little subjective, but under accessory, so this was from the town of Braintree. They kind of, under the accessory structures, they say accessory uses shall be such that they do not alter the character or impair the neighborhood. They shall be on the same lot with the principal use. So that's vague language because it's subjective as to whether or not it alters the character or impairs the neighborhood. But I think probably if you have a residential house and you are in a residential neighborhood, there's at least some loose expectation that it, say, wouldn't look like a commercial structure versus a residential structure. And so, like I said, right now we have no language guiding anything, but they kind of they have a lot more zoning than we do. So I don't think that we're gonna all of a sudden go to having a lot of language, but some of the things that they have are, for instance, they limit the accessory structure for a garage to not more than 3 cars. And a 3-car garage, in that example that I gave, of 1,123 square feet, that would say roughly be 24 by 47. So the average oversized 2-car garage is like a 24 by 24. So if you had a 3-car garage, that would be like 32 by 22. So the 30% would be even larger than what a 3-car garage would be. And then I think about that doesn't mean that the person can't already have a 2 or 3-car garage. So now you've got parking on a average residential neighborhood for maybe 6 or 7 vehicles. And so I don't know, maybe that's, again, okay. I don't know what people's expectations are when they move to a neighborhood, but that wouldn't necessarily be typical in most neighborhoods, I would say. The other item that they had a number of items, but another item that they had was they restricted the weight of the vehicles to no more than 10,000 pounds. The average car is 4,000 pounds. So there's nothing from stopping somebody from, say, having tractor trailers that are 53 feet long in said accessory structure. We also don't have any language about whether or not the vehicles are commercial or for profit or private or any of that. So those are just some of the things I found, but I would like to maybe see us add maybe just a little bit more structure to our proposed language, including even just where we say in the A for attached garage, it says, I think this is where it said it, let's see. A, for front, side, or rear yards and height of structure which apply to the dwelling. I think it was there. Oh, maybe it was the bottom one when it was D.
What you just quoted is in A.
Yeah, that was in A. Oh, here it is. It's in D. 30% of the total gross floor area or footprint, whichever is smaller, of the primary structure. In Braintree, under definitions, they actually define what the primary structure is, and they're very explicit that it does not include the attached garage, because like a 24 by 24 attached garage, which is often typical in a primary dwelling, would increase the footprint quite significantly. So that 30% would no longer be the 24 by 36, which is say like your standard house, but it would be 24 by 36 plus the 24 by 24 if you say had a 2-car garage, which would make that accessory structure even larger. So some thoughts.
Great. Well, thanks, Deb. Yeah, so I think, like I said, this is just the beginning. I mean, you start to think about it. I mean, it opens, if we were to start changing things, then we have to, we have to look at lot coverages. I mean, there's lots of, this can sort of bleed off into a lot of areas. So I think some more investigation of what other communities have done. And so if anybody finds anything, feel free to forward it to Stephanie so she can forward it to the board. And, I don't know if anybody, on this subject, if you guys have any thoughts, or I know it's the first time we're hearing it. So, maybe we can circle back on it, or we will circle back on it in the next meeting. I don't really have
I
much.
think we can probably do something that's not too overbearing, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what we try to do with all
Yeah.
our zoning when you think of it, right? So,
I mean, right, nobody wants a super garage or a super metal building or two trailers permanently parked, right as close to their property as possible. So I think that's something that we can probably address.
yeah, and I don't know. To me, it would be sort of placement also. If if of course we have lots of different lot sizes in town, but it would, if someone is going to put up a large, non-residential looking building, which I don't think we're going to be able to stop them from doing that given our board's purview.
Yeah.
Maybe if we can help nudge, the placement of it a little bit, because it can affect people's enjoyment of their house. It can affect people's property values. So there's some real issues there. I get it. And one way, it's sort of the reason we have, when people always give me their anti-regulation speech, I said, well, without zoning, you could have a gas station or a sulfur plant right next to you. So it's good to good to have some regulation.
Greg, isn't this bylaw need to also have a statement of intention of this regulation underneath, like matching the neighborhood residential style or whatever, and that is aesthetical, but there is also maybe some functional things like the usage that you cannot have for that additional structure. Maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, the use is covered. I mean, we have pretty extensive use tables. But I think, I mean, to your point, I think if I understood you correctly, you're trying to hit you're trying to keep it within, if it's in a residential neighborhood, trying to keep within the feel of a residential neighborhood, for lack of better words at this late hour. We have use tables. They've been really refined through the years, and they're pretty common in a lot of towns, because this is certainly not the first time these type of issues have come up. But anyways, we got a lot to do, so I don't want to get too in the weeds on this in this preliminary stage. But just give it some thoughts, and we'll circle back at this at the next meeting, because we've got a good 2 or 3 working sessions. We can whatever, decide what we're going to town meeting with, if anything, and get it worked out. And the same thing for, I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea to to prohibit using metal storage containers for permanent structures. I don't know if I might be wrong there, but on a first whiff, I kind of go, yeah, that might not be a bad idea to think about.
Yeah, I would agree, because I mean, I think that affects the neighborhood character, and I think most people can probably tolerate a temporary situation.
Right.
Although it'd be nice if we defined what temporary is then, but yeah, if it was a permanent, industrial container, I don't think, you buy a home in Easton thinking you're gonna live permanently next to an industrial container. So.
Right. Yep. I concur. All right. So let me get back to my list here. Where to go? All right, so Stephanie, I seem to be a little discombobulated right now. So, all right, I'll just use my paper list. So, all right, those are his accessory structures we've handled. Quesad Commercial District, I guess we'll do that one next, since that's, so as you all recall, we have spoken, and important to remember, the Quesad Commercial District, as you recall, is broken into three districts, or three sub-districts, A, B, and C. What we're talking about tonight is sub-district C, which runs from the intersections of Depot Street and Washington Street, right where in the vicinity of 661, i.e. Korea's Plaza, and runs up to what, the Dunkin' Donuts? Does it run to the road into the industrial park, Stephanie? Do you know offhand? I'm trying to think.
I thought it went beyond that.
No, so I'm just talking about sub-district C.
Oh.
The whole district goes all the way up
Because then
to
it goes to the smaller buildings. so
Quesad by the
separate
pond. But
standpoint.
anyways, I
think
don't want to.
it probably runs, does it, that's the sewer district that ends at the brook.
It goes up maybe to El Mariachi, right in that neck of the
Yeah,
woods or so.
yeah.
But in that vicinity. So any zoning, if we were to change anything, it's for the entire sub district. It's not obviously not just for one property. And but the genesis of this, as we may know, was Ed Walsh coming in to talk to us about his situation at 661. And quick summary of the zone. If you think of the zoning of the sub-district C as it affects Mr. Walsh's property, it allows for residential units, but they have to be part of a mixed use project. And the zoning that was passed a few years back allows for 4 residential units per acre. And then there's breakdowns into the bedrooms, or 8 residential units per acre if you go in and do 25% of them affordable as affordable units to count as against our SHI number, the affordable housing numbers, the 40B numbers, if you will, in layman's terms. And then it also requires, as a byproduct of when we did our zoning study about 8 years ago, that 2/3 of the gross square footage of any mixed-use project be commercial, 1/3 be residential. And we know the property owner in this situation has mentioned to us, or he was here at our last meeting and talked about the issues trying to get financing with those numbers. So he has been looking to see if we've had numerous conversations. He's been looking to see if we could, maybe change ratios to increase the density or change the percentage of commercial and residential, what were the ideas? So Stephanie and myself have met and discussed a few things with Ed Ryle, and we've had discussions here at the board. And where we kind of got to was, and then we throw this out, this is out for discussion. This is nothing said at all. So we're just now as you know, at the last meeting, Ed came in and gave a presentation, and we said, okay, that allows us to see, hold a public hearing, which we'll be having in a few weeks. But we now need to see what, if anything, we want to change with the bylaws. And real quick, my thought was, okay, first of all, I wouldn't want to go all residential. When we did the zoning of this property, of these properties, I should say, we don't have a lot of business zoned real estate in this town. And we know that. We all know we're heavily reliant on taxing of residential houses, residential properties. And we don't have a direct access. We don't abut a highway. So, and I get that bricks and mortar is changing, but it's not dying. It's not going to go away. It's going to evolve. Don't know, do we know into what? We have some ideas, but got thinking back to, okay, mixed use. What we're trying to do, you think of Ed's building, we're trying to create a downtown, right? A new downtown, new walkable neighborhoods. And you think of his building, it was sort of like a couple of nice you know, it was like a new downtown, varied storefronts, varied building facades with residential above. And when we wrote the zoning with Judy Barrett 8 years ago, we put in there, we allowed for up to 3 stories close to the road to help emulate that. The original proposal for this property didn't really take advantage of that, but you know, thinking just in terms of the whole 1/3, 2/3, and on the heels of the jump back for a second, the Economic Development Council 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, right after we finished the zoning, they received a grant and they did a study of this area. And one of the thoughts was, oh, maybe, you know, maybe there's a little too much reliance on commercial. Maybe it needs a little more percentage-wise of residential. So the thought was, okay, well, if we're trying to emulate a you know, sort of the old downtown where you walk in and the ground floor is the commercial use, be it whatever, it's a barbershop, it's a restaurant, it's a store. Then above that is a floor or two of residence, of apartments or condos or, you know, whatever. I would think apartments being a college town, but so, you know, you start to think, well, okay, you know what? So that's one thing. If one floor is commercial and the 2 floors above are residential, you know, so maybe it makes sense. You know, maybe it ties into what we're talking about, because we don't want to get rid of the commercial. We want it on the ground floor, and you know, would still give us the ability to stack the buildings, take advantage of the height density that we created and the town approved overwhelmingly with the bylaw. So for that, I look at it, so you know, Stephanie and I said that, we mentioned it to Ed, and I mentioned it to you guys, and it was like, well, you know, that might make some sense. You know, it does seem to have a synergy with everything that we talked about. In terms of the density itself, just a couple of reminders, like I said, so right now, if and this is density for residences. So at 4 units per acre, that is, hold on, let me find my notes. Bear with me here for a second. So, what did I want to say? Yeah, so, okay, so at 4 per acre, you get 8.4, so you get 8 apartments per acre. If in the current zoning, or if you go to the affordable unit, you get 16 or 16.8. If you compare to what we approved in Furnace Village, and these are 2 very different districts. I'm just giving this for reference because the owner brought this up last time. If you remember, in the Depot Street sub-district, we have 1 per 5,000 square feet, so that's 8.71 per acre. And then in Eastman Street sub-district, we have 17.4 per acre, because that's 1 for every 2,500 square feet. And frankly, in some discussions, Mr. Walsh has said, well, gee, since we passed that, you passed those up on Furnace Village, can't we use that here? But we kind of got back with, well, you know what, but if you look at the Furnace Village, if you look at the Depot Street, you know, around Shaw's, that's more similar to this property here at 661 Washington, or to the sub-district C, I should say, than the Eastman Street, which is sort of more open. It's an industrial area, much more modern. You know, the construction with Target and Big Y and the Starbucks up there. And so we were more open up there to perhaps larger residential buildings with a little less commercial, but back in the mixed area, we wanted to see more of a mix, and we wanted to see a smaller scale, you know, fitting into the neighborhood and all of the items that we had spoken of. So, so all that, I'm babbling on, forgive me, I should try to be more succinct, but so just kind of wanted to give a quick, you know, recant. Then there was one more thing that came up. When we got into some of the specifics on Ed Walsh's property, we started to pitch a couple ideas to him, different ways maybe it could be subdivided or broken up, and I couldn't help it. You know me, I'm always pitching the master plan and walkable neighborhoods and diversified housing. And we still, you know, we've approved 2. We have 2 flexible developments that have been approved and are under construction, are doing well. We have another one that's before us. We have one compact neighborhood coming up. So I thought, well, okay, if they're having trouble financing this project, and I know I don't think the flavor for the town would be to put all residential units in these parcels. Or in fact, I know it wouldn't be. And knowing that we've since this project was approved too, and the zoning was written, we have another 40B project, which looks like it's earmarked for approval with I think 110 units up on Union Street. So that's neither here nor there, but that's just that's a variable that has changed. And I think it's important to continue to try to find diversified housing and small home owner opportunities. So we pitched an idea with, hey, what if you remember the back parcel, for example, at 661, or that abutted, I think it was 123, that was the house. What if you put a compact neighborhood in there, where the board would have architectural approval, give it a historical look. You have sewer, so it would be much less burdensome. You wouldn't have to worry about some of the items that you would with a sewer. And you could get, maybe you could get 10 or 12 homes on a couple acres and create a new village and have, a home ownership at a substantially reduced price of, from your typical new house in Easton, which seems to start at $950 these days, and get back to some of the old village housing of, whatever, 13, 14, 1500 square feet. It's very successful in Foxborough. Mansfield's got one coming up, and it's, there's a new generation out there, be they younger who don't want the large homes, but want to be close to services, or older empty nesters who want to get out of the old house, but still, they don't want a condo. They still want a small yard to, for the fire pit, for the patio, for the cornhole, for the bocce. Those are all just some thoughts, and it's kind of where we're at. Ed was in here. He liked what he was hearing from us, and we decided, okay, let's go to a public hearing to see if, let's schedule a public hearing to see if we do want to tweak the zoning. So I tried to touch on everything, went a bit long, forgive me, but Steph, is there anything you want to add or that I forgot? Or
I don't think you forgot anything.
and what, let me show you guys just real quick.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing so you can do that. I'm
going to just show you, let me find a sketch. And this was because I had been talking to Ed about compact neighborhood for a while, and it wasn't, I don't know if he was really catching on. And then during a Zoom with Stephanie and Ed, I showed him this picture, a plan I had done, and it seemed to have, there we go. 1, 2. All right, now let me get to where's share screen. All right. Did it work?
Yep.
Okay. So you can see, so this is actually two things. This is a section from the zoning, I'm sorry, from the assessor's map. So here's Washington, here's Depot right here. Here's Korea's Plaza. This is 661. This is 123. So this is that small house that we actually subdivided off earlier this year. So you can see this is where he originally came up with a total of the property was 4.87 acres. So then over here, my little plan I did, so you can see just for reference, I still kept the building shaded in. And obviously this hasn't been engineered, and there, we need to deal with drainage and other things like that. But these are 5,000 square foot lots, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And there was 12 of them right there. And I'm not saying it had to be, but I guess the thought was, if he was to do something like this, obviously it's under a special permit, and because we really need to make sure this is an important parcel. But you could see if the building would move closer to Washington Street, and then we'd have some decisions to be made. Originally, I remember the zoning had talked about all those parking being out back, street calming, aesthetics on the street. But if, for example, if a liquor store is going to be one of those stores, one of the commercial uses, and you think of how those are on a weekend or on a holiday period, we may, or any other busy commercial use, we may want to have a little parking on the street. May want to vary it, but we certainly would want to get a green buffer between the commercial and the residential use. And it's a little out of the box thinking, but I think there's potential there. I think we definitely have to go and, if we decide to move forward with something like this as the board would definitely have to talk to the neighborhood, long before we send them a certified letter for a public meeting, to get their flavor. But the thought is, okay, well, house is here, people, again, we're planners, we have to think in 10 and 15-year chunks, but up the road, you could see them walking to services, restaurants, in this area as the road evolves and the sidewalks are brought in and improved in streetscape. So that's just to give you a visual sort of what it looks like. Of course, by doing that, just in this case, if you're basically taking that original residential parcel off. So now if we keep the ratio, and by that I mean the 4 units per acre or 8 units per acre if you do affordable, you'd be looking at basically with this 2.1 acre parcel that's left, Korea's Plaza, he'd be looking at either 8 or 17 units. 17 units, I guess, because I'm assuming he'd do it the same way with the affordable. So it's, but it would have a, substantially less burdensome financial package in that you're only creating half as much commercial space as you were before, but still a substantial commercial space. If your average apartment is in Massachusetts last year was 710 square feet. You'd have various sizes in here, and the bylaw carries that. But so if you start looking at 16, so you could get upwards of probably 10,000 square feet of commercial. So it would be, again, this is if if we were doing this compact neighborhood housing. So I think important to keep the commercial use or mixed use along the street. Oh, that's my grandson. There's Leo, 2 weeks old. Long live King Leo. Sorry, had to be obnoxious.
That's a good idea about how to deal with that back portion that we rezoned. Now we can rezone it again, but it just does kind of open up a little bit where, if any of us happen to buy 2 acres of land and whatever, it doesn't work out for us, we can go to the planning board and get 10 lots on it. You know what I mean? I don't want to make fun of the situation, but it's just, that's what we're doing.
Well, so, I understand what you're saying, but I look at, there's no one that can tell me the current state of wide swaths of our major commercial routes are in good shape, both real estate wise and aesthetically. And I think improved infrastructure should be leading to improved development.
So how's the sewer
which will lead
down to that end
property
of the
value.
street?
I'm sorry?
So is the town planning on putting sewer towards the end of the street?
Oh, yeah.
Something happens, or what was ever the plan with that in the first place?
So I believe it was already done. Mr. Walsh had a deal with the property owners of Dean Fuel and the D'Angelo's Plaza to run I thought I started being run earlier this year, Stephanie, maybe to run the sewer up that way.
It hasn't gone over the bridge yet, has it?
I'm sorry, I don't know that it's been done. I know that was the plan for the
I'm
development.
pretty sure it hasn't gone. I drive by it every single day, like twice.
Well, I remember about 4 or 5 months ago, I went by and they were in that parking lot. They were running lateral something, and I just assumed it was the sewer.
Yeah, they were doing something there under the bridge, but it was pretty quick. And then they didn't cut farther than that, I guess, as far as I know. But
yeah,
okay, that'd be good to know.
Don't know.
I know it's not really part of our bylaw work, but now that we're into the second rendition of trying to get this done, we should probably know what's going on.
So, yeah, I think the question, and Pete, your point is valid. I get it, but it's, our options are, as planners, we try to come up with solutions. Solutions, though, that meet the objectives of the town, right? The objective here isn't to make sure someone can develop their property. Now that's the genesis of why we're here.
Oh, I know, but yeah, it's a much bigger issue. It's kind of it's an important piece.
Right.
And it's
But
obviously
I think we need to, there's lots of issues. Bricks and mortar was changing even 8 years ago when we wrote this with Judy. And now fast forward with COVID, and how that's changing. And we don't even know how everything's going to shake out. But the core of what we still talked about is still in place. That 123 coming out of Brockton is pretty much fully developed, most recently, and so during your next growth period, whenever that is, in whatever form that is, it's going to be on 138. And what we'd like to do is keep Easton the special, unique place that it is. Some of the proposals we were hearing during this troubled period for this project were put in yet another gas station and the largest convenience store in New England. Those weren't exactly the gateway to Easton we were looking for. On the other hand, if someone were to propose, just put in, one proposal came in, they wanted to put 80 apartments here. And not what personally I want to see here. That's not the best use of this property. And again, I can't help it. I haven't been shy about this. I'm looking for diversified housing types. We've had many, I understand the value of the 40B apartments we've received in town. We've received several hundred now of large scale apartments. And I'd like to see apartments that are done a little creatively, or I'd like to see smaller homes, compact neighborhoods, unique condos, historical preservation, done with.
Yeah, right. So yeah, right. It's not all about economic development and whatever someone's theory about lowering our taxes, right? Because if you wanted, you could put in a big convenience store and it would be guaranteed tax money, right? Property taxes forever. Whereas, but that might not be what people want. So we're kind of paying to not have that. Just like we might, want to pay more taxes to not have too many apartment buildings everywhere. Well,
I think you might be overstating the tax revenue from one convenience store. I don't think, I don't think it would match the tax revenue from, for example, the first proposal of 31 apartments and 56,000 square feet of commercial space.
Yeah.
If I could just throw a couple of things in there. First, as a comment, I love the creativity here, Greg, and I think it does make a lot of sense, especially under the circumstances. But I also want to echo another point that you sort of touched on, which is, obviously a lot of thought and planning went into this the first time around. But, and we're talking about this for a very specific reason. But I also think it's not a bad time to reevaluate, the 1/3, 2/3 rule, if nothing else, because I think that with COVID, at a minimum, I think office space is going to change considerably. And the 2/3, 1/3, in my opinion, is going to be difficult, at least in the near term, to get anything done, with a lender or, with even a savvy and experienced developer. So I think just reevaluating that piece of it for purposes of this entire district, I think makes a great deal of sense, just based on the situation that COVID has kind of put in our laps.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And and it's not that maybe it's not necessarily the ratio, maybe it's the numbers of the housing numbers, aggregate housing numbers that we have to look at there.
The other thing to keep in mind, when you have smaller homes, you're probably less likely to have a lot of school-age children in your school system. The number of school-age children is dropping. or at least staying stable. And so these units would still generate tax revenue, and you do have a single tax rate in Easton. It's not as
Yeah, I
though,
know, but we live right down the road, so not everyone wants to just have extra people living here with more traffic just to have a, minimal, tax benefit. That's just kind of my opinion.
Yeah, but 10 houses aren't really going to add that much traffic. And I read this online all the time, how all the thousands of homes we're building. You know how many homes are built in Easton in a year? It's under 20. We have eaten up this town with all of the open space, and that's fine. We love it. But towns, we don't want to stop growing as a town. Now, by that, we're not gonna have a huge building boom of residential homes because we just don't have the land left. But at the same time, and tonight we're spitballing, we're brainstorming, or it's a little more than that. We've put a little more thought into this. But again, look at the current state of Quesad Commercial District C and B and A, frankly, most of it. And tell me that is what you want for Easton. That's the gateway to Easton. That's the tax revenue source for Easton. Well, something's not working, right? And we need what we were so excited for this project originally because it was gonna start copycats. It was gonna sow the seed. Once that first person invests something and puts something up nice, you see it. You see it in neighborhoods when someone does a nice paint job in their house and it goes up further. Well, you also see it in commercial. This district, these three districts, there's really three large parcels that have possibilities for any really substantial development, and this is one of them. And so it's important that we get it right. And the compact neighborhood thing, well, maybe that doesn't work. I mean, we may find out that if the neighbors, the abutters scream and can't say, we're not going to force anything on anybody, but it's a matter of, to me, I thought it tied into a lot of what we've been talking about. These aren't just ideas I'm just, coming up with out of, this is based on master plan, neighborhood meetings, all these things we've done for the last 15 years. And to Bob's point, commercial, I mean, this is a big parcel. And I can remember what was going through here. I was asking the team, I'm like, wow, you guys really, you knew it was a huge project, expensive, but it's, they was all positive. They're gonna, well, it turned out they couldn't put it together. So we're not trying to save anybody, but we're trying to, that's not our job. But if we can come up with some zoning that maybe we need to revise anyways because of evolution, and we can help pave the path, no pun intended, for a project that can lead to, because economic development, it's not because, oh, you lose money if there's 3 kids in the house. You lose a lot more money on the assisted care, actually, with all the trips to because they can't did you know assisted care staffs can't pick up people? So the fire department goes like 700 times a year to the assisted cares in Easton. We lose a lot more money on that than we do a couple of kids going to school. And but we need to measure the impact on the town. And if we can get some nice looking buildings up that will stir development, investment, people will take pride in their buildings. Property values go up, rents go up, and people say, oh, my rent goes up. Well, but if you buy it, then you own it, and your property value goes up. And it could, that area really needs some help. And look at Easton. We're always talking about our open space, and look what Shovelworks did for downtown. Downtown was always nice, but boy, it really made it shine because people, additional businesses opened up. It's humming. I did a house a couple years ago on Oliver Street. I'm amazed how many people on a weekend morning, even a weekday morning, are buzzing on going to Governor Ames. Well, we can continue to do that. It was easy to do in Northeastern because it was resource rich. Everything was there. But this is a very nice area too that just needs some revitalization. There's some beautiful houses and buildings along here. There's a great history. We just need to try to figure out the way it can happen. And it's not, we deal with zoning, But we're not the consultants that come here for a couple of months, get paid and leave. We stay here. We know the community. We talk to the people, and we deal with the developers. So we have a developer that couldn't put together what he thought he could, and it's not our job to save it. If it, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But if there's a solution that we can come up with that serves the citizens of Easton, based, fits everything we've talked about, then I mean, that's why we're here. That's our job. And we may not be successful on this one, or we might, but we're going to give it a try. So that's what we're just trying to do. We're just kicking around some ideas and see if we can come up with something. It's the best we can do. So everybody, put on your.
I generally agree, Greg, and I mean, I think that to some extent, like, you just have to consider supply and demand too, and obviously, if Easton continues to be a desirable place to live, like you said, just even adding occupants to Shovel Shop like helped generate commercial business. And I think, I certainly would prefer to see us reevaluate that commercial requirement. I think we have commercial spaces in town that are existing that are vacant as it is, like pretty nice spaces. And so I don't know if our current zoning is really appropriate for what is going on in town right now, or.
This point is like the exact point that's important. And so the bigger picture is, what do we want to do with all that land? Do we want to just have multifamily apartments, or do we have can we figure out something that's actually going to be good for the town?
Well, we're still considering keeping it some sort of mixed, like, we're not saying we're gonna.
I know what you mean, but but the way
commercial
things
part
go,
of it.
it's just that's what we're trying to do here. That's
I don't know what you're saying.
agreeing with you. That's what we need to do. But how it gets done, that's the trick here, because we tried once and it didn't work. So
Don't we as a board still have some hand in how things are shaped and result? Like, it's not just like you.
That's our job. Yes,
part of our
we have
hands.
a hand in it. Sure. I mean, the responsibility does fall on us. Look at the history of this that I brought us through. Judy Barrett was here. I know Judy's worked a lot in Easton, but there's no substitute for, Peter, you grew up here, correct? Right? If I'm not mistaken. I've been here since I was 21 years old. The entire time whenever in my life I've been able to choose where I wanted to live, I've chosen Easton for 34 years. And Deb, I've known you for many years.
Yeah, I've been here since I've been 25 too, or something like that.
Bob's wife grew up here. Lives on one of the most beautiful scenic parts of town. And I so prefer, I think when policy, in this case zoning, planning, when it is determined, directed, helped be created by folks, I always say residents should have a say in their land use. You have to be realistic. When people say, I was always told that land I don't want anything built. Well, that's great. Buy the land and donate it. But short of that, people have land rights. So we try to determine what the best land use is on this. We wrote some zoning 8 years ago. We listened to experts on some things. We did some stuff. And in fairness to the people involved in that time, things have changed quite a bit since then. And that's even before COVID. So we're now just like, all right, what? And if we don't come up with a solution that we're happy with as a board for this time meeting, then we don't have to do anything. We're not under the gun. But clearly there's a resident in town who hasn't been able to get projects financed. So, okay, can we, now that's not our responsibility to make sure it can get financed, but can we, it brought it to our attention that, hey, we might need to, he's having, this may be trouble to have this financed with the current zoning, any project. So maybe we need to tweak it a little bit so we can get a successful project here. Doesn't mean we're going to lose our values. Doesn't mean we're going to we're not gonna, and this isn't about, the bottom line is we have to do something that's right for the town of Easton. But leaving that site the way it is right now is not right for Easton. So anyway, just, there's no answer to be had tonight. Just, get it run through the grist mill. And, we've got, Stephanie, what is our drop dead date for any zoning articles is what? We'd have to vote on them. Early April, right?
Yeah, it's,
I'm not sure that's correct.
Suzanne, what,
Oh, I thought it was
it's the
Suzanne.
very last day. I believe we have until,
Well, the public hearings start on March 29th,
Yeah.
right.
and we have to vote to bring each of these articles to town meeting. I'd say before the 29th, because there's a public hearing notice that is published in the paper starting Friday. And then I guess you have, I don't know the date exactly, Stephanie, that the board could keep revising.
Hold on, I think I have the agenda,
I thought it was in
I have
April.
The timeline close at hand. Oh, I thought I had it close at hand. Have to go back to my desktop.
So while they're looking that up, the three things, just to summarize on this, that we need to decide, and again, we can decide nothing, we can do nothing, but do we want to change the breakdown or the percentage of commercial? Right now it's 2/3 commercial, 1/3 residential. Do we want to flip that or change it to something else? Like I said, I propose flipping it. Do we want to consider a compact neighborhood overlay district? And then do we want to consider changing the density? I'm not necessarily a proponent. But that's just a question to come up. I'm not really, I don't think we should do that in my own opinion, but we may as we go with this, but I'm just one of five here. So, but do we want to change the density from what we have in there, X units per acre. So that's, and my thought is we'll have another discussion at our next meeting on the 15th. 29th is the public hearing. And then Stephanie, did you figure it out?
April 12th is the drop dead date.
Drop date. So basically we have 3 meetings, because if we had to, we could always schedule, one in between, but we've got, so that's good. That's a good runway to work on this anyways, on all of this stuff, So I think the town meeting goes so fast, but, and we'll take a look. And if we don't, if we can't come to consensus, or if we come to consensus on a couple of things, that's fine. We're not looking, to change our principles or what we've worked on before. But like everything in life, variables change. And I'm not talking about based on, negative or positive funding. That's really just, bricks and mortar and COVID, frankly. So, but all right. So that's everything on Quesad, right, Stephanie? Yeah.
Yes.
And then on the Furnace Village, so we have, I think, 3 things. One is we forgot a couple parcels. Think of it. We had, reminds me of that. Anybody watch The Office?
Yeah, sometimes.
Michael's famous line, snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. Do you know the effect 3 surgeries have on someone? So that was sort of, we had, Stephanie started with us, then Stephanie left, and we had Andrea as interim, then we had Imai, and then we were on our own for a bit, and then Stephanie came back, and we had some board changes on that. So the parcel, Bay Road, the house, the little road that goes from CVS to what used to be to Walgreens, now it's to the dollar store. And I sort of call it the house on the island, the little house on the left there, which I have the address somewhere here, but I can't find it. Oh, here we go. 581 Bay Road. So that was always going to be in the district, and it just like I said, I actually noticed about a week before, but I was just like, you know what, we'll just deal with it in the spring, because I knew that COVID town meeting was going to be crazy, and to try to do anything on the floor was not going to make any
Yeah,
sense.
we were almost so focused on the other side that we didn't really look at.
Right. Well, you know what? We just,
That corner anyways, yeah,
I was trying to I was trying to show Stephanie where we're at, and that just, what, you know.
Yeah.
And then considering how many changes we had, I think we did pretty good. And then 497R Foundry Street, which is basically, it's a parcel that is behind McGuire, the building that McGuire's is in. And it's a large parcel. It actually comes out to, there's been a for sale sign for a while on Foundry Street, sort of to after that the old bank that's in the McGuire's parking lot. Right after that, it looks, it's and the wet. I mean, I think there's two streams there. It's totally wet, and I'm assuming undevelopable on the street. But you know, there's potential, possibly, with a little carving up of some land, to if that building ever was expanded or taken down and that property revamped, or some A&R work was done. There may be there's a lot of wetland resource out there, but there may be some land. So that it would make sense to look at that piece, and we had it in there. I don't know why this one came out.
That's a new one.
Sorry, Peter.
But is that a new one though, not an oversight from last time?
No, that was I didn't even, until Stephanie brought that up today. I didn't even know it had been missed. That was always, I went back. We always had it in the maps, so it just. You know, we had 4 people working on the maps, so and sometimes,
okay, yeah, I didn't remember that.
Remember during one of those periods, land things we didn't even talk about were happening.
Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's up for discussion now anyway, so we can think about that.
So that's that. And then we have dental. So let's see. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Okay, additional. So another thing. So here's a question. You remember back when we were, it was Furnace Village still. And remember we had the when we came up with the ratios, X per square feet, we'd actually it's ironic. We started with the ratios we had in the Quesad commercial district that we were just discussing. And then we talked with Judy, and then, at some point we came up with, I think Judy proposed the 5,000. We had a bunch. I mean, you guys don't remember, we changed a lot, but we ended up with the 5,000, one per every 5,000 feet in Depot, one for 2,500 in Eastman. And then we had that phrase in there that basically says, or more as allowed by special permit by the planning board. So if you went back and you looked, and this seemed to have disappeared when Imai kind of did his omnibus rewrite. And at one point, when you think of it, okay, what would allow us, what's that hinge point that we're going to say, okay, we're going to let you have, instead of 15 units, 30 units or whatever the numbers are. And at one point we had followed the wording of Quesad commercial, which basically said, okay, you can double it if you do what 10% or 25% affordable. And we had that in there. And then I couldn't remember, did we take it out? Did it just not be there? So the question is, since we have to go back and do the dimensional table, it didn't get voted on because of the quorum call. Do we want to put any wording in of any type to give the planning board now or in the future a little bit of guidance that, I guess, or guardrails, not guardrails, guidance to make those decisions to allow increased density? You know what I'm saying?
You're referring to the 5 to the right within the 5 corner section? What? I'm
sorry. What?
Which section are you talking about?
Well, it would be both. It would be the two. It would be the Depot Street sub-district.
Oh,
and
he might have redo Depot Street on us. He redid Furnace. He was working on Furnace Village.
What?
He might did.
No, so Furnace Village has there's three, well, there's 4 districts in the Furnace Village. There's a residential district, that's the moot point, it has nothing to do with that. Then there's that business district in the middle, same thing, those staying as is. But then up, there's the Eastman Street sub-district, you know, up by Eastman Street, and then there's the Depot Street sub-district around. So right now, Depot Street is 1 for every 5,000, and Eastman's 1 for every 2,500. And so that's basically 8 and 16 units per acre. That's what it comes down to. But then we have that phrase in there, that clause in there that, oh, but you can do more. So I guess what I'm thinking is, should we do an affordability component so that it doesn't have to be, but it would allow a developer to bring in an SHI component so we could count units against the 40, you know, our SHI against the 40B count, which isn't bad. Or let's say, and not, you know, not every project has to have an affordability component. That's right. But just like it did with the foundry, it would give us the ability to have some sort of linkage or some sort of mitigation. You know, if we're going to double, you know, if we're going to double the density on a project, for example, well, what's in it for the town, right? It kind of just gives us the ability to ask that question. I'm just looking, do we want to structure that at all, like, sort of like we did in Quesad?
What are our affordable numbers right now? Housing numbers right now? Like how good of a job are we doing at meeting?
So we're at 10.3%. Easton's at 10.3%. You have units that, and the, if you want to hold on, I can actually pull up the last report I did on, Wayne and I worked on this. But the long story short, the 2020 census data, when that comes out, will bump up the base number of residential units on which that 10% is calculated. And the town needs to look at some additional units to keep ahead of that 10% or on top of it.
So Greg, are you suggesting possibly considering adding that component to like just the Eastman Street, or to all of it, or to just the?
Yeah, you know, honestly, it goes back to before town meeting, and again with all the change. I thought we had it in there. We have a Q&A.
You know, it's interesting because Wayne Beitler had mentioned that to me as well, and he said it fell off at some point.
I know we talked about it, but I don't remember now.
Yeah, Dale Carrister, that is correct, to answer your question. So yeah, I mean, you know what? I guess that's irrelevant because, you know, hey, we voted on what went to the floor town meeting. I'm just thinking, okay, we have to, and if we don't have to do anything, but I'm wondering, it's almost like, do we want to make it easier for ourselves? And by that, I mean, you know, do we want to give ourselves any, and guidelines is even strong, but what are we going to, as a board member, what am I going to base my vote on, whether I'm going to let someone double their density? You know what I'm saying? So, so I'm thinking, well, if we did an affordability component, which no one's forced to do, but it would, you know, again, I'm always looking to try to find ways that we, you know, that we can get the 40B numbers without having, by having local say, you know, so that's, you know, so, I mean, that's really the only thing I think we could do.
Well,
that.
Greg, given the fact that we're doing this by special permit, don't we have appropriate discretion to consider sort of all of the above, including an affordability opponent, even with the current language as it is?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, where it's a special permit, absolutely.
That's kind of, I mean, I do remember the discussions on this. Candidly, I don't remember these discussions about adding that language being connected to an affordability component. But I don't think there's anything that would prevent us from requesting that in exchange for these, you know, the consideration of additional density. you know, particularly if that's something that's going to allow us as a town to have additional control over just development in general, to stay away from those 40Bs.
Sure.
I think that's totally, I mean, that's my opinion. You know, I'm just throwing it out there, but I think that would be a totally appropriate consideration.
It's true, but you know, like Greg said, maybe not for every project. I mean, given how few new homes we're building, you know, it's not as we want to keep up with it, but that's why it's nice to have a few in most projects, right?
No, yeah, no disagreement here. I guess my point is just that
You can do it, yeah.
the
either way.
language that we've got now is, I think, at least in my mind, it was designed to give us maximum flexibility to consider
No,
any and all of the above.
Yeah, I mean, how I look at it is, okay, our bylaw, by right, you know, well, it's a special permit, but it still lays it out. Okay, you can get X number of units. But then we agreed to put that clause in there that you can have more, right? Up to whatever it said, you know, double or whatever. And I'm like, okay. But I look at it as, you know, and Bob's right. I look at it and say, okay, what are you, the proponent, the applicant? Why should we give you, you know, additional units? What are you doing for us? And maybe there's linkage payments. Maybe there's open space. Whatever. Maybe it's just such a fantastic project for, oh, yes, let's do this.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, that's, you know, that's the same thing. Jay, you know, all you lawyers are. That's what I mean. You're right. Yeah, Jay Talman says the same thing, that, you know, the by special permit that allows you, you know, to do that. That's how we did the Foundry. You know, the Foundry was done that way. There's no required. There's no wording for anything required in there. It's just special permits implied, and that's how you do business. You get together with the applicants ahead of time. They tell you what they want to do, and you give some ideas of what you'd be looking, and then you try to put something together. You know?
I mean, we usually put the affordable component in writing in that particular you know, bylaw, special permit. You know, to sort of maybe just to sort of like have, like Greg said, have some structure where people, you know, kind of have a baseline to work off of. But if we don't have to, maybe we could try it that way.
Yeah, I mean,
see how that works for us.
You know what? If things hadn't, if two more people had come to town meeting or hadn't left early on that miserable rainy night, we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
Yeah,
but
right.
Since it had to circle back, and it was, you know, part of this, it was, you know, it just kind of, we did the best we could last year under, you know, it was a crazy year between personnel changes and COVID, and a couple things I would have liked to have seen gone differently to town meeting, but they didn't. So you know, or I shouldn't say it quite that way, but you know, anyway. So I just thought, okay, we have to go back with this. You know, you're just right. We have to go back with it. We can keep the density and dimensional table just the way it was. I just wanted to bring this up to, you know, why we have to talk about it anyways. Figured just give it some thought. So I think we've kind of answered it. And same thing, we're not voting on anything tonight, but if, you know, if anything changes, anybody changes their mind or something, we can talk about it. But what I'm hearing is we kind of want to just do it through the special permit, which that's fine. It's all good.
Can I do just want to answer Deb's question about the SHI. So again, the town's at 10.29% right now. And with the projected number of new units that will be reported with the 2020 census and all the affordable units currently that we have in the queue, the town will need to make up 20 new units of affordable to get back to the 10%. And that presumes that all the projects that are in the queue, including 661 Washington Street, as well as the units that comprise that are comprised by Quesad Commons, all come to fruition. And that's based on a static number, because every time you add new units, of course, the next time the census comes out, you'll need to bump it up.
So then, Greg, kind of what you're saying is, given that we're kind of allowing them to have density and we know we have this need coming up, why not just say, build that in to one or part of this these tables. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Or
we,
suggest-
yeah, I was saying, did we want to do it the way we did it in Quesad? That's, you know, which Quesad is, you know, X units through special permit, or up to two, or 2X units, W units, if, you know, if a quarter of them are affordable.
Well, if we added that language, I'm just talking out loud. If
Sure.
we added that language to the Eastman Street portion, and that came to fruition according to the density we kind of have outlined, we would, how many affordable units would that potentially generate? Maybe that's not an easy question to answer offhand.
Well,
Apartments are treated differently, right, then?
well, think of it. So the units at right now, the density is 1 per 2,500 units, right? 2,500 square feet. So that is, so that's 17.4 units per acre. And in the Eastman, and I'm trying to think, there's a parcel up there that we actually looked at someone with a couple of years ago, but I'm gonna guess it's maybe three
Yeah,
acres.
right.
That's
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
oh, I just want to ask if I have this incorrectly, because I have 1 per 5,000
For the depot.
for depot.
And
Right.
1 for 25.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
but Eastman, we're
Yep,
talking about
yep,
Eastman.
yep, got it right. Okay.
So in theory, so here, let's do this. Here, let me pop the property map here. Give me 2 seconds, Deb. I can answer this a little more professionally. So let's see. That is. Oh no, parcel's not as big as I thought. All right, so one's 56,000 feet, so you know, 1.25 acres. And another one's 56,000 feet. So 2.5 acres. Let's just say they were one parcel, right? 2.5 acres. So 1734, 42 units at that density, or using your question, you know, if it had similar, so that's no affordable units. That's just straight. I mean, they can do affordable units, but they're not required to. If, for example, it had the zoning of Quesad, and you could double that, so you'd be at 80 units, of which a quarter have to be, or is it 10% or a quarter have to be affordable?
If you only make it 10%, you're not actually getting anywhere. You're just keeping up with it.
Right. So yeah, it's 25% in that case. So so 20 units would be affordable. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So that's on the 2 parcels that are up there. You know, I'm not saying that's no one's proposed that, nothing. And just an example.
At least at 25%, then you're
right.
You're knocking off 1.5.
10%, you're actually losing. You know,
if you do 10%,
you're losing 10% at some point.
Not doing that well.
2% or something. But whatever. You know what? Why don't we? It's getting late. It's been a long meeting. I appreciate you guys doing it. But and looking, I can tell everybody's all the contemplative looks on everybody's faces are really crunching the numbers. But we've touched the base on everything. And this is what Steph and I want to do tonight, was just kind of get the ball rolling and all this.
Yeah.
Some of it's obviously easier than others. And you know, and there's no, if we don't come to a solution, if we don't progress in a way that we're happy with on any of these heavy lifting ones, then we don't touch them. No, we live to do another day. But we just try to lay out what's going on here, and you know, and we'll give. I mean, the big one obviously is Quesad is the one, probably the most work we have to do in terms of thought.
And yeah, from a thought
You
standpoint.
know, and then because if we're going to try to put a, you know, if we decide, hey, maybe we should try an overlay district there, that's a lot of work to do that quickly. because we have to build consensus, but I don't feel we're proposing anything that isn't in the pipeline of feedback we've gotten through everybody in town, things we've talked about. But anyways, so is everybody good cutting off the zoning talk here? After 2.5 hours of listening to me babble. I think we have minutes, right? Where's my agenda?
We do.
Let's see, I just had the agenda here.
If
Yeah.
you need to, if you need me to display them, just let me know.
No, I looked. They
To
seem
watch the
fine to
meeting
me.
2 weeks ago that I missed, and it wasn't on ECAT.
The meeting wasn't on ECAT from 2 weeks ago?
No, the last one I could find was February 1st.
Huh.
I think I saw, I'll double check.
Okay, I tried to watch it, I want to see that, some of those things.
I saw it.
I'm trying to think because I had, Suzanne and I had a question and I asked Suzanne if she could review the
Yeah, I'm forgetting right now, but I think I saw it.
video to make sure
Okay,
that.
Okay, well, I'll check tomorrow then, before you have to do any work. Check right now. But, yeah.
I wore a new shirt that night. I wanted to look my best. I hope it made it.
So are there minutes on?
Oh, there are minutes. Do you want me
Sure,
to,
yeah.
I asked if you want me to display them. I can certainly do that. Hold on. I have to get to the end of the binder. They're kind of hard to see.
No, they're there. They came up.
There we go.
Okay. Do you want me to just kind of scroll through them, Peter?
Nope, I have them right here. I'm looking at them.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, I looked at these last week. I was fine with these.
Can I just say one thing, Mr. Chair? On page 4 of the minutes, the board took 2 votes to bring zoning amendments to town meeting.
Oh, yes, thank you.
On page 4, the first was the Quesad Commercial District, Subdistrict C, and the second was Appendix A2 Special Zoning Districts. The process is, if you're considering bringing zoning amendments, and I know you didn't finalize anything tonight, I suggest that the board take a vote just on accessory units and compact neighborhood overlay districts just to cover yourselves, but it's up to you. Does that make sense?
So Greg, what Suzanne is saying is that just to make sure that if the board moves forward with a vote at the hearings, that the board formally vote on those 2 subject areas tonight for consideration at a hearing. Did we lose Greg?
Oh, maybe.
I don't know.
Oh, no, he's there.
he's
No,
there.
I'm here.
He's
I'm here. No,
muted.
you lost me for a second, but I came back. Didn't we? I thought we voted on that at the last meeting.
You could look at page 4 of the minutes and see
Oh,
what
we're on February 1st today. I don't think we have those other minutes, do we?
we didn't vote those other 2. We didn't vote accessory and we
Or
didn't vote.
compact neighborhood overlay district.
You can see those 2 votes on page 4 that we did vote.
So, well, yeah, I mean, let's vote and cover whatever you think we need to vote on. So we need to vote on the
To hold a public hearing for,
accessory.
yep. And the compact neighborhood overlay district, the Quesad.
Can we do it in one motion?
Sure, as
Yeah.
long as you include both in the motion.
So someone can just say, so moved.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, and very proud of the succinctness and the efficiency of my board. All those in favor? Strange eye.
Shane, aye.
Stetson, I.
Balsaric, aye.
Forgive me, I shouldn't have said my board. I meant the town's board.
Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? I don't know what just happened. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? No, all those in favor, Strange eye?
Shane, aye.
That's an aye.
Balsaric, aye.
All right, I think you guys are about to lose.
Again,
And
jeez.
that, Greg, you have anything else for us?
We lost Amos and Chris
Okay.
at some point too, unless they signed off. That's all that's on the agenda.
I believe that's all that was on the
Peter.
agenda, so, it
You want to
was
step in?
nice to spend the evening with all of you.
Oh, no, his
Well-
With
computer.
that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second. See you guys later. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, do we have to say all in favor? But yes, we all are in favor, Balsaric, aye.
That's an aye.
One out of three.
Amazing.
All right, have a good night.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.